You are listening to episode 279 of the Peaceful Mind podcast. Welcome to the Peaceful Mind podcast, a place for creating the peace of mind you need to be the best mom you are created by God to be. If you want to bring more balance, more joy, and more peace to your motherhood, this is the place for you. I'm your host, certified life coach and Catholic mom, Danielle Tienel. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, let's get started. Hello there, beautiful friends. This is Danielle Tienel, and you're listening to the Peaceful Mind podcast. We're on episode 279. I'm so grateful you're here today, carving out this little pocket of time for yourself. So whether you're folding laundry, hanging out by the pool, sneaking in a walk, getting yourself ready, listening to a podcast, that's when I usually listen to mine. I'm just honored to be your companion for the next little while. So today we're talking about something that touches all of us pretty deeply, and that is friendship. And specifically, I want to talk about how to nurture those meaningful connections when life feels like it's too packed to do so, or if it's moving at lightning speed, right? And I'm calling it the friendship refresh, because sometimes our relationships, they need a little intentional tending. Like the garden maybe has grown some weeds and we need to, do that little refresh. Literally just had my own landscaping refreshed. So that's why I'm using that kind of metaphor. It feels so good, right? To have the edging done and the weeds taken out and then the new mulch. And I love the smell of fresh cut grass. So it needs tending. And just like everything else in our life that matters, friendships need tending and a refresh too. So just yesterday, I was looking through old photos on my phone and I saw some pictures. It was back when, because my son, recently just had a milestone birthday, and I was going back to some birthdays and I could see from some of those early parties, the women and the moms and the friendships that I had. And now these boys are all I'm seeing, then I'm turning to social media and I'm seeing pictures of them. They're about to graduate, just like my son, and kind of moms posting things like where they'll be going. But was thinking from seeing the moms about how little of them who are in my life now, or I really just think about how I really loved and cherished their friendships. And then they're not as rock solid. And that's what sort of kind of sparked this podcast episode. So it hit me, right? That there's certain people that I'm regularly in contact with. And then there's some of them where I'm not in contact at all. And I'm not saying that that is a problem at all. I'm just saying that sometimes circumstances like this of seeing those kind of bring a new kind of pain point to light. And that is what I wanted to be sharing with you today. Again, not because anything went wrong, but because life happens, right? That's why people move, there's career changes, there's different seasons of parenting. Our paths naturally diverge. And while there was a time when that would have made me feel sad, right? Or even I failed on that friendship somehow. I have come to recognize that there is a beautiful ebb and flow to life. And therefore, there's a beautiful ebb and flow to the friendships that will be at the forefront or maybe in the background throughout our lives. So if you're ever feeling guilty about friendships that have drifted, or maybe you're overwhelmed by the thought of maintaining connections when you can barely maintain your head above water with the household and everything you have going on, then I hope that this episode is especially meaningful to you. So let's just talk about the changing landscape of friendships, right? That's the first thing we need to acknowledge. And that's that friendship looks different in different seasons of life. Right? When I was in college, I think about my roommates and my friendships there, and that meant living together, studying together, eating together. We were like practically in each other's pockets. But like once we graduated and life goes on and then motherhood comes, that like it changes the landscape of those friendships dramatically. I remember when one of my children was about 6 months old, and that I realized that I hadn't really had a real uninterrupted conversation with a friend in like months. By now I'm thinking of my youngest when he was 6 months, and I had 3 children by now. And it's not because I didn't value those relationships. It's pretty much because I can remember I was in survival mode, which doesn't really leave much room for coffee dates, right? And then I also can think of a friendship that I had at that time where it was long distance, and she was my longest and most cherished friend. And we literally talked almost every day of our pregnancies and then in those first years of our kids. And I remember how I had very much an easy, because it was pretty much a phone call a day, I had an easy time keeping that friendship tight and strong. Which leading up to having children, we had kind of had a little bit where we had stepped away from the friendship. And the motherhood stage just kind of like renewed it again. I mean, what I've learned from that and what I want to share with you is that friendship isn't static, right? It evolves. It evolves as we evolve. And that's not only okay, it's beautiful. So in this season of motherhood, I really appreciate quality over quantity. I'd much rather have 3 friends who truly know my heart than like 30 acquaintances who know what I post on social media. And really research out there backs this up, right? It's not the number of connections that contribute to our well-being, but it's the depth of those connections. And thank goodness, because I'm entering a stage where I have less chances to be around larger group of friends, like when my daughter was part of the gymnastics team, and when you have, like, when you're in the midst of school and you have, events at school and just the activities of your children, right? Where that is now less for me. And so there's less like larger kind of group friends getting together. So I've also come to value the different roles that friends play in my life, right? I have like coaching friends. I really do consider my clients. They might not even know it, but I really do consider them my friends. I know I'm their coach, and I know that there's that professional coach relationship, but in my mind, which that is where relationships take place, right? Is in the mind, my mind, I definitely see them as friends. And so there's different roles, right? Than the ones that might be who live in your neighborhood, who go to your church, the ones that you can see. And then there'll be these friends who don't even live close by, and maybe it's literally just communicating through text or, again, comments or messages back on social media, and you still like consider them friends. My mind actually does a little organizing or separating when I think of like those that like friends who grew up in my neighborhood, friends that I only knew through my school years, my college friends. Then there's like in my first career as a professional ballet dancer, I kind of see those that I knew from there. And then right now I have a lovely, lovely, small, tight group of coaching friends, right? Where we really connected through our certifications to become life coaches. And then we met through different kind of groups and mastermind and things like that. So that's kind of how my mind thinks about it. But if you're somebody who is right now thinking that you have barriers to be able to connect with your friends, let's talk about what actually gets in the way of nurturing friendships. So, and the reason why is because I think naming our barriers, like becoming more aware of it, is the first step to actually overcoming it so we can work towards having a refresh with our friendships if that's what you want. So the most obvious one, the barrier to friendships is time. That's at least what your brain's going to offer you, right? Between our obligations of work responsibilities, family needs, household management, trying to maintain your own well-being, right? Like that's where you can be like, where are we supposed to fit in a girls' night or coffee dates? I get it. Like I really do. And closely related to our thoughts about our time and where we fit things in is our energy, right? These are our limited resources, time and energy. Because even when we do actually carve out time, sometimes we're just too depleted to engage meaningfully with our friends. How many of us have finally scheduled a friend date only to spend the whole time kind of yawning or struggling to form, clear sentences maybe because we're so exhausted? Then there's that comparison, that insecurity that builds up in us. Social media doesn't help with this one. That's when we're looking at these curated glimpses of other women's friends group. Maybe they've gone to spa days or group vacations, and then we wonder if our own friendships measure up to that. Or maybe there's some things where you're saying, I'm not involved with them, or they don't ask me to participate anymore, right? We then hesitate to reach out because what if you do want to get together and they come over and then you think our homes aren't perfect enough to host, or we're not interesting enough to have something to talk about. And then finally, there are those practical logistics that are barriers to creating that connection in our friendship, right? Especially those with us who have young children. So coordinating schedules, finding childcare, managing different family needs, it can feel like organizing a small military operation just to have coffee with a friend. And so when your brain anticipates all of that would need to be done for you to like, quote, escape for a little while, right? It probably tells you like, it's not even worth it. And then that happens again and again and again. And before we know it, we look and think, oh, I'm so disconnected from my friendship. But here's the actual truth, right? Friendship is worth navigating through those barriers because we were created for connection. It's not a luxury or an extra. It is part of your self-care routine, and you will be filled up by connections with your friendships. It really just is essential to our well-being. It's part of that self-care bucket that I want you to fill, because then you will become a more efficient and effective mom. And that's what I know you all want. You want to feel good about your mothering and where you are in life. And so this is one really vital piece of that puzzle, which is refreshing and connecting in your friendships. Studies consistently show that strong social connections are associated with greater happiness, better health, and even longer lives. And this is exactly why we want it for our own children, right? Why we want them to have play dates, or we want them to have social gatherings, or we take them to the park and have them interact, right, with other people, because we know it'll make them happier and is better for their overall health. And so we want to be able to see that we are just as important to have this same kind of friendship connection as they do. And as Saint Teresa of Calcutta said, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. And friendship reminds us of our belonging. So let's talk about some strategies and hopefully some practical ways that you can open up your mind to and have a little bit more peace around how you could begin to nurture your friendships if that's something that you feel is like lacking and you want to put some focus to. So how do we actually maintain and nurture friendships when we're in the midst of a busy season, busy life? Right? First of all, I want to remind you that probably isn't ever going away, this quote, having a busy life. And so, maybe we can just lean or drop into that it really will take yourself being intentional and deliberate to make this be one of your goals. But I have some strategies, right, that I've worked on for myself and for many of the moms I coach as well. And the first thing I want you to do is I want you to embrace what I'm going to call here micro connections. This is kind of born on when I think about how when moms want to be able to connect with Christ more, or they're feeling guilty because they're not praying more, or they want to add more sacraments to their life, and I'm just like, it doesn't have to be huge, right? It can be bite-sized, and those really do add up. And so what these micro connections that I'm kind of like opening you up to, they're small but meaningful touch points that you can have with your friends that maintain the thread of a relationship when you can't do like grand gestures. So an example of a micro connection would be something like a quick text saying, "Hey, I saw this and I thought of you." Or a voice memo. I'm using those more and more. And actually, my daughters have started sending me them back. So I do love that. A voice memo, maybe you send it while you're folding laundry, right? I mentioned earlier, like when we have a comment on social media that shows you're really seeing them. I just did this for one of the moms that my son went to preschool with. And I have on occasion, seen things here and there. And I think she reached out when I had one of my books published, which was so kind. And I think she purchased one. And I just was like so compelled to like send out that micro connection, that touch point with her, to give my congratulations for her super sweet, talented son who has recently, just really had something wonderful happen into his life. Besides the micro connections, second, I want you to get creative about combining your friendship with other responsibilities, right? So if you are deciding to add walks into your life every day, why don't we set up walking dates, right? So instead of coffee dates, then you're going to combine your exercise and connection with a friend. What about trying to go grocery shopping with a friend, killing two birds with one stone? I know that it might seem like longer, or your brain might tell you, how do I even do that? But anyways, again, it was just an idea that spurred up for me, and maybe somebody will take it and run with it. Play dates where the kids entertain each other while moms talk. One of my favorite traditions is kind of like the way I view it. It's like you're being productive with two things at the same time. And you can meet at one of your houses, and maybe you even might have your laptop there and you work side by side for a couple hours. Again, these will seem a little unconventional, or your brain might say oh, well, if I'm going to be together with them, we might as well be talking. And maybe you will, but if your brain is not doing it at all because you're oh, I have this work to do, again, why not just try it out? Try this parallel productivity thing where you're nurturing a friendship and also doing something that was on your to-do list. Yeah, maybe then you work in a lunch break where you're okay, this is the time we actually talk and catch up. The last kind of practical way that we could refresh and really connect in our friendships is to practice vulnerability as a shortcut to get that depth in your connection, in your friendships. So, sometimes when you have small talk or superficial things, it takes a little bit more time to build connection. But sometimes when you are being super honest and vulnerable about your life, that it really can create bonds much faster. This doesn't mean dumping all your problems on someone, right? Especially someone you just met, but it does mean being willing to go beyond talking about the kids and the activities and the weather. One of my favorite questions to ask friends is, what's bringing you joy right now, right? And what's feeling heavy? I love to know what's bringing them joy because and this actually just happened to me, right? When I was on a trip with my son and his friends and their moms, I knew that I needed to have my phone app ready to write in my notes because I knew I was going to hear and learn what's going on in the moms' lives that's working. I had a couple TV shows that I really got some good ideas about. I got some like nutrition things. And anyways, I left with tons because I was asking them, hey, what's bringing you joy right now? What's working for you? And then also when you go the other way, there's like, is there anything you're feeling heavy about? And it opens the door to like a real conversation. As soon as you hear someone say something that inside you're like, oh my gosh, me too. Like, don't you automatically just have this like kindred spirit with that person? Yeah. And if we're never vulnerable, right, then we're always kind of like working in like a facade that everything is great and hunky-dory, which is not really how true life goes. I actually don't really think that anymore. I know that if someone's giving off that persona that everything's like perfect and going well, that I know that they're human and that they have a 50-50 life too, where there's positive and negative. So try being vulnerable and see what that does with connections. Fourth, I want you to create sort of a rhythm of connection rather than relying on, oh, I just hope like maybe I'll meet up with somebody someday, or maybe I'll run into them while I'm, dropping them off at practice or whatever. I want you to be more, more in a routine, right? So instead, I want you to build friendships that are like natural rhythms in your life. So maybe that's like a monthly book club, right? Where there's a rhythm where at least if you either create one or you look to join one or see if anybody else is interested in starting one, then you will know, well, at least once a month on that every Wednesday night or at 6 p.m. or something, I'll be able to connect with those particular friends. How about a standing early morning walk every Tuesday or an annual weekend away? I just met up with my college roommates when we had our milestone birthdays all together in the same year. And I hadn't seen a couple of them since my wedding, right? But of course we talked like, hey, what if we just make it an annual weekend? So we don't go that long with having, and it was so much fun. I was filled up so much. I laughed and I just reminisced. Anyways, it was wonderful. And so why not build that into a routine and have it happen every year? Okay. Let's talk about the change of the seasons. And I'm talking about, not talking about summer to fall and fall to winter, right? When friendship seasons change. This part of it could be a little bit more difficult, but it is equally important. Recognizing when friendship seasons change, because not every friendship is meant to last a lifetime, and that's okay. Sometimes we outgrow people. We outgrow relationships. Sometimes our paths diverge so significantly that the connection no longer serves either of you. And yes, sometimes it's one person that decides that it doesn't serve them. And in that case, it's probably not going to serve you as well. Sometimes what brought you together was having kids around the same age. Maybe you were working at the same company. Maybe you were living in the same neighborhood, right? But changes, we'll discover that there maybe wasn't much beyond that certain circumstance that was keeping you connected. So how do we recognize when a friendship has served its purpose? I'll just invite you to pay attention. Pay attention to how you feel after you spend time together or when you're communicating. Do you feel energized or do you feel drained? Do you feel uplifted or do you feel diminished? Does the relationship bring out your best self or does it trigger insecurities and negative patterns? It's also worth noting that if the relationship has become one-sided, if you're always the initiator, always the listener, always the giver, right? Healthy friendships, they do have a natural reciprocity, but even if it doesn't look exactly equal in every season, then it's just something that I'm hoping I'm opening your mind to. I don't mean that if you say, you know what, I'm always the one who initiates, I'm always the one that listens, like, forget it, I'm not going to be friends anymore. I'm not saying that. I'm just, again, giving you some things to think about, to have you evaluate and make decisions and choices that will support and serve you better when it comes to feeling refreshed and renewed in your friendships, right? So when you recognize that a friendship season is changing, that you can then approach that transition with more grace, right? It doesn't mean to be like it doesn't need to be a dramatic conversation like we're breaking up, kind of like usually it simply means just kind of like allowing the natural space to occur without forcing connection. And then I definitely want to just reiterate, without harboring any guilt about it. And as some friendships kind of naturally transition, I would love to invite you to remain open to new connections. This is what I want to do better myself personally, right? And I used to think that making lots of friends was impossible. And I kind of have this story right now in my head that I need to work on and coach on about not being able to have any more as many, friends or deep friends, because one that I mentioned before is that, with my kids getting older and not being in those activities that kind of foster that. And then the second thing is that and some of you who have longtime listeners know this about me, but my childhood best friend died a little over 5 years ago from breast cancer. And so, I've struggled thinking that was my one and only, my true best friend. And sometimes that sadness and disappointment of not being able to live my life with her here on earth, it kind of trips me up sometimes to help me stay with like less friendships and less connection. And I do want to change that. I do want to be open to having, a bestie. And it's not like it's going to replace my other, we can have several. So just want to wrap up today. I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to reach out to one friend this week, especially if you've really found the timing of this episode to be something that you've been avoiding, or you've already felt in your heart that you wanted to have more connection with friends, or want to put more focus and deliberate action towards creating connection with your current friends or creating more friends in your life. So reaching out to somebody this week, right? It doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be a text, a voice memo, like I mentioned, a quick call, just some small act of connection. Because I'm always underscoring here on the podcast that small efforts matter, right? They do add up. And know this, you don't have to be the perfect friend, the one that remembers every birthday, hosts elaborate dinner parties. Thank goodness, because I don't remember everybody's birthday and I don't host elaborate dinner parties. That connection can happen in small gestures, right? That just say to another human that you see them and you matter to them. In a world that I think can become increasingly isolated, despite all of our technology, right? If you intentionally reach out, I think that's now more these days is becoming like a radical kind of act of love. It's so worth the effort. It really is. Because your friendships give you value to your survival in this beautiful, challenging season of motherhood that you find yourself in. They remind you that you're not alone. They help you remember who you are beyond your role as mom, right? And they provide spaces where you can be fully known and fully loved. So that is what I wanted to open you up to today, remind you of, kind of hopefully inject some ways of thinking about your friendship that can bring you more peace of mind. And I hope that despite whatever season you're in, because they all could be called busy, I hope you decide to nurture some connection and give your friendships a refresh because of what you've learned and heard on the podcast today. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you all. And until next week, may peace be with you always. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Peaceful Mind podcast. If you found value in today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you could subscribe and leave a review. It not only supports the podcast, but ensures you don't miss out on future episodes packed with insights and tools to create peace of mind in your busy mom life. And if you're of the Catholic faith like me or any Christian mom seeking to feel better in any area of your life and to show up more calm, connected, and confident, I can help. Become an empowered mom who knows how to bring about the changes you desire, no matter the circumstances. Whether you need one-on-one guidance to get there, prefer a group coaching program with like-minded women, or a self-study course, I've got you covered. Explore my private one-on-one packages, join my Busy to Balance group life coaching program, or delve into my signature course, Divine Time. To find out which path is right for you, let's meet and see what's the best fit. Schedule a free call with me at danielletenoul.com or send me a direct message on Facebook or Instagram at Danielle Tenoul Coaching. And also, don't forget to get your copy of my book, The Cyclone Mom Method, How to Call on Your God-Given Power to Remain Calm, in Control, and Confident as a Busy Mom. Dive into the digital and bonus audio version when you go to book.danielletenoul.com/new-book. You'll find all the details in the show notes too. Until next time, peace be with you always.